Have you ever heard the sound of galloping hooves long after midnight? They say in a forgotten village of the north, a headless rider still roams, searching for the skull that was stolen from him. Tonight, we'll uncover the legend of the Headless Horseman of Santa Clara. Long ago, in a remote corner of North America, there was a gang of cursed cowboys. They were ruthless bandits, cattle thieves who rode fast horses from town to town, stealing anything of value: cows, horses, gold, even the last coin from a widow's hand. Every town they touched was left in ashes, and the more they stole, the louder they laughed. Their leader was only known as the Chief. No one knew his real name. People recognized him by his black hat, his cold stare, and that eerie smile that could freeze your blood. He always carried a gun at his hip, and a cruel confidence in his voice. One evening, as the sun went down, the chief gathered his men around a campfire deep in the woods. The flames flickered across their filthy, exhausted faces. "Listen up, boys," he said. "Tonight, we hit Santa Clara. They've got fat cattle, fine horses, and gold locked away in an old house by the church. Pablo, Juan, you start a fire near the village. While they're distracted, we take everything." Juan shifted nervously. "And if anyone resists..." The chief smirked, tapping the pistol on his belt. "You already know what to do." That night, the bandits rode into Santa Clara like shadows. Pablo and Juan set the nearby woods ablaze. The villagers, unaware it was a trap, ran to fight the fire. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang slipped into the homes, taking everything: livestock, money, jewelry, anything worth stealing. Those who tried to stop them never lived to tell the tale. One villager, desperate, begged as they took his cattle. "Please, don't take my cows." The chief looked at him with dead eyes. "You should have stayed inside." Then he nodded to one of his men, and the gunshot echoed across the night. When it was over, the bandits vanished into the forest, returning to their secret cave. There, they feasted and celebrated, roasting stolen meat over the fire. "To the chief," one of them shouted, raising a greasy piece of meat. But while they drank and laughed, the nearby villages were uniting. Word spread quickly. Angry farmers and townsfolk sent letters calling for revenge. Soon they formed a militia, armed with old rifles, pitchforks, and torches. One evening, an old shepherd spotted the bandits entering their hideout. Heart pounding, he rushed back to town. "I've found them," he shouted. "I know where they're hiding." The villagers wasted no time. That night, dozens of men rode toward the cave. The sky grew dark, the wind howled, and thunder rolled through the mountains. The ground shook beneath their horses as they charged forward. The bandits panicked. "The villagers are coming," someone cried. They tried to flee, but the rain poured hard, turning the earth to thick, slippery mud. The chief's horse stumbled, throwing him to the ground. "Help me, damn you!" he screamed. But his men didn't look back. They left him there. Moments later, the villagers surrounded him. They dragged him back to town, beaten and bleeding. People who had lost everything gathered in the square, their faces burning with hatred. One of them lifted a machete. The chief's final scream was swallowed by the storm. When it was over, they hung his head on a tall post in the center of the plaza for everyone to see. His body was buried in a nearby cave, and for a while, peace returned. But not for long. Years later, strange things began to happen. On nights when the wind howled and the moon was full, people heard the sound of galloping hooves. But when they looked, there was no one. Until some began to see him, a dark figure riding a black horse without a head. One villager who saw him returned pale as death. "It was him," he whispered. "It was the chief, but he had no head." And those who felt the rider's foul breath became sick for days afterward. People stopped leaving their homes after sunset. The headless rider roamed the roads, his voice echoing through the night. "Give me back my head!" Years later, a young man named Pedro decided to walk through the forest with his girlfriend. The night was calm until they heard the distant sound of hooves. Pedro froze. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. From the darkness between the trees, the headless rider emerged, galloping straight toward them. Pedro grabbed his girlfriend and ran, but the rider was faster. "What do you want?" Pedro screamed. A deep, hollow voice answered, "Where is my head?" Pedro trembled. "What head?" The voice echoed through the forest like thunder. "Years ago, your people cut off my head and hung it from a post. Find it, and I'll leave you in peace." Pedro nodded desperately. "I'll find it. Just don't hurt us." The rider turned his horse and disappeared into the night. Pedro and his girlfriend ran back to the village. He went straight to his grandmother, the oldest woman in town. "Grandma," he panted, "the Headless Rider chased us. He wants his head, but I don't know where it is." The old woman looked at him gravely. That man was the leader of the bandits who terrorized this town long ago. They cut off his head and hung it from a post, but no one remembers where. The next morning, Pedro searched the ruins of the old plaza. Among the dirt and weeds, he found an old skull and a black cowboy hat beside it. Heart pounding, he placed them in a bag and returned to the forest that night. As the wind howled, the rider appeared once more. Pedro raised the bag. Here's your head. Now leave our town in peace." The Headless Rider's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You are brave, boy. For that, I'll give you a reward." He pointed toward the mountains. "Near that great rock lies a cave filled with treasure. It's yours." Before Pedro could speak, the rider took the skull and vanished into the dark. The next day, Pedro found the cave. Inside, buried beneath stone and dust, was a chest full of gold and silver. With that treasure, he helped rebuild the village and married the woman he loved. From that day on, the Headless Rider was never seen again. Some say the rider still roams the countryside, forever searching for his missing head. Others believe his soul finally found peace. But legends like this remind us some sins of the past never stay buried. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more haunting tales from the dark side of folklore.